All right, man. I'm lucky and blessed to be able to have the legendary A&R rapper. I might be missing some other titles, entrepreneur, business broker, all those good things. YZ in the building with me. How you doing today, brother?
I'm absolutely living and blessed, and I'm honored to be here.
Man, the pleasure is all mine. Like I was telling you, man, before we started, I met you a couple years back, and I didn't get the full picture. But I'm glad to be able to talk with you and get more of the picture for myself, but also for everyone else. Because man, it was something you said in one of your interviews, man. We have to tell our stories, and we can't expect other people to do it for us.
That's right.
And then if we don't tell it, these stories are lost, man.
Absolutely. There's no better griot than the person who's actually lived the story. Now, we talked about Islam earlier. What makes Islam the most interesting of the three religions that are sister together is that it's based on a song. And if you could just learn the song and get through the Quran in that way, everybody will be on the same page, and the story will never be changed. It'll never get lost, or here it is. We know when we talk about the Bible, how many times the Bible has probably been tampered with or called this version or that version. Or well, the beauty of of Islam is that story is taught exactly the same way every time. And I believe that with hip hop, and just like any other story, if you just focus on it, tell it well enough to somebody who's actually listening and paying attention, when they deliver the story, it'll get its just due. It'll get told in the way that it's supposed to. And all it's going to take is that person to tell it in a way where the next person will be able to pass it on. And that's what the griot was all about.
And that was a gem.
But you know that.
Nah, that was a good gem you just dropped, because that was something they told us coming up, just how the Quran's written in its original language, and that allowed it to be preserved. And hip hop's the same way, man. It's got an original language, even though people put their own spin on it. So matter of fact, let's start there then. So you're from Jersey.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to see if I can get this right. Were you born in Trenton and raised in Patterson?
No, I was born in Patterson. I was never raised in Trenton.
Okay.
I was born in Patterson. I moved from Patterson. We moved from Patterson to Central New Jersey when I was about 12 years old.
Okay.
My mother's job had moved. And so when it moved, my whole family moved. And my dad, he ended up getting a job out near her. And we moved to a place called East Windsor. The high school that I went to was called Heightstown, exit 8 off the turnpike. And it's about 30 minutes away from Trenton. My parents actually live in Ewing right now. When I first went to college, I went to a community college called Mercer County. And that's even closer to Trenton than where we live. But that's where I'm from. I was born in Patterson, went to high school. Actually, we moved there in 8th grade, so a portion of 8th grade, I was there. And then from there, I ended up moving to New York.
Okay. I read in the interview, but I think it's good to rehash it. So Rapper's Delight was your introduction to rap.
Well, Rapper's Delight was introduced to me in a strange way. I was walking to the store with 2 of my cousins, Jamal and Trina, their brother and sister. They have a younger sister named Tisha. She wasn't with us. And they have an older sister named Wasina. She wasn't with us. But these 2, Wasina's older than me. Trina and Jamal are both younger than me. Trina is just under me, and Jamal is just under her, and Tisha is under him.
Okay.
So while we're walking to the store, they're singing Rapper's Delight. I don't know what Rapper's Delight is. And I'm wondering, how is it that these two younger people who are younger than me, even though we were just little kids, I'm still older than them. I'm the big cousin. And they seem to know something that I don't. And so I asked them, and they looked at me like I was like an alien or something, like, how do you not know this record, So I made it my business to find out what that record was. And the next time that they saw me, I knew every word to it.
Man.
I actually wish that probably wasn't the song that I had learned first. But I'm happy to know that at least a portion of that group was from New Jersey.
That's a good part.
Which is a plus. The song that really changed things for me, even though I wasn't really a big fan of this group, or any group for that matter, the song that really changed things for me, for rap in my mind, was The Message.
I figured you were going to say that.
Yeah, The Message kind of showed me, even though I was just a really young boy listening to it, that you can actually paint pictures with words. And I had known this because I was a real big, and still am, a big Prince fan. And Prince is probably the reason why I actually started writing more poetry. I started rapping when I was like maybe 9 or 10.
Okay.
Because I was introduced to Rapper's Delight and I was figuring on how to do it. But I didn't really become serious until we moved, because at this time when I was with my cousins, I was still in Patterson. By the time I became a Prince fan, I was probably 12, 13 years old. And I was one of those fans where I wouldn't have his picture on the wall, but I would have his symbol.
I get you. Yeah, that's iconic symbol.
I would have his symbol on the wall. And then I remember Prince being real dark. At least to me, he seemed real dark. He seemed like a person who would talk about God, but when you listen to it, it almost sounded like it was scary and dark and even sexy.
That Jehovah's Witness background, you know what I'm saying?
That's probably what it was that made me feel that way about his music. So anyway, I started writing poetry at that point, seriously at that point, or at least serious to me. And by the time I was close to 17, I was actually recording my first record.
Exactly. Okay. So before we get there, I got 2 questions tied into that. How did you settle on your name? And how did you get introduced to the religion of Islam?
Okay. YZ kind of came about while I was in Heightstown.
Okay.
The 5% Nation was real big in Trenton and its surrounding areas. As a matter of fact, all over New York and the tri-state area, the 5% Nation was really, really big. I never considered myself to be a 5%er, but 5%ers at some point would consider me to be 5%er because of what 5% means to them.
Gotcha.
I couldn't be considered an 85er because I wasn't blind, deaf, or dumb. Nope. And I couldn't be considered a 10%er because I wasn't trying to hide it. I was really trying to tell the world whatever I knew.
Right.
So most 5%ers would speak to me, and we would build, as they would say.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I didn't know it at the time, but YZ kind of stuck And then I began to understand what why meant. And why is two things. It's a question. It's a question often asked by those who don't know, right? If you knew,
you wouldn't
ask why. Why also is the 25th letter of the alphabet.
Correct.
Right? Z, which is the answer to that question, is also representative of three things. Top line being knowledge. The downward slant is the wisdom, and the base being understanding. And that's how Z became the answer to the question. When I first started YZ to me was the beginning of the end and the new beginning. And because just like numbers go on forever and ever, Z could never actually be the true end of the story. It's just the end of an era until the new era. So YZ was the beginning of the end, then the new beginning.
Dang. I don't think I've ever heard you explain it or read anything where you explained it.
I have, but like I said, sometimes maybe people just don't hear you or listen. But if you go back, even in written articles, it's there because it's always been the same.
Hey. Okay. So I know you touched on it a little bit about your career, and I guess we look at 89 as a start.
Actually, it started before 89. My career started probably 87.
Okay.
Maybe even 86. I was doing demos around 86. I was just a kid. Still in high school. And this brother, this Italian dude, this brother I met by the name of Tony D, who was a DJ, probably about 4 or 5 years older than me, asked me to come to his house to make a demo. And so I did. I went to his house and we recorded this demo. And what he did was he played Trans Europe Express slow to this drum pattern. And I rhymed this rap that I had wrote called I'm Bad for about 9 minutes, or at least it felt like 9 minutes. And that demo ended up getting in the hands of this guy named DJ Woody Wood, who was a part-time DJ in Philadelphia at Power 99 under this guy named Jeff Mills, who was a DJ for Lady B at Power 99. And Jeff got in touch with me. And he was just like, yo, I got this demo. I really would like to sit with you and talk about some things. So my dad took me to the Dunkin' Donuts near our house. And when we got there, Jeff was there. He parked right next to Jeff's car. My dad didn't get out the car, but he kept his eye on that car and in that car. And what I did was I got out the car, got in Jeff's car. He had the demo in his car, playing it. And he was like, hey, I like this. I like to, really record this and we need to make this into a record. And so he asked me if I was interested. I told him I had to talk to my parents about it because I was probably only 16 at the time, or maybe about to be 17, maybe. And my mother said no. My mother was like, you can't do it.
Man.
And but my dad said, you gotta let him do it.
You
And
definitely.
gotta let them do it. And so my mother reluctantly allowed me to go. I went to Evergreen Studios in New York with Tony D and two other guys that I had formed a group with called Two Def. One was G Rock, and the other guy was Tink. And so, even though we were called Two Def, you would always see our names under it. It would be YZ, G Rock.
All right, that's what that was.
And Tink. And so, we recorded that song "I'm Bad," and on that same day, that same night, we recorded a song called "I Am Who I Am," which I had wrote for G Rock and I. And that record ended up becoming our first single. And how it became our first single was Jeff. The minute he got test pressings, without even saying anything to us. Remember, he was a mixed show DJ in Philadelphia. That's not New York, it's Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And I remember where we lived, you can hear all the New York stations and you can hear all the Philadelphia stations. That was the beauty of where we lived. In New York, you couldn't hear these Philadelphia stations, and in Philadelphia, you could not hear those New York stations. We lived in New York, because there are even portions in Jersey that you can't get those stations, and vice versa. Like in Camden, they can't pick up the New York stations.
Because of their location.
Patterson, they can't pick up the Philadelphia stations. But in our area, in the Trenton area, that central New Jersey area, you can pick up all of those stations. So anyway, to make a long story longer, without announcing it to us, one day I was listening to, the radio, just like I did every Friday and Saturday. I would be going back and forth stations from Hot 90, not Hot 97, from 98.7 KISS to WBLS. So basically I was going from Mr. Magic to either Chuck Chill Out or DJ Red Alert,
oh, man.
or listening to Lady B's show. And I was more in tune to listen to Lady B's show, because now her mixed show DJ had our stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, to make a long story much longer now, and I hate that it's just becoming longer. But before I even knew it, he was playing the record, and I didn't even recognize it. But my brother said, "Hey, ain't that your record playing?" And it made me stop. And sure enough, before I knew it, I was running out my door, running over to G-Rock's house, who lived in the apartment complex across the street from me. And by the time I got there, G-Rock was already playing the record outside of his window.
He beat you to it.
Everybody was like, he couldn't believe it that we were being played on the radio. And the song that they were playing was that "I Am Who I Am," that had us both on it. Anyway, that record became a little local mainstay for some weeks. And I remember we did a show at the War Memorial Building because, like I said, in Trenton you can get both stations, but they listen to Philadelphia stations. And I remember the War Memorial was having KRS-One and MC Shan, that battle between them, they were having that show. And we were the opening act for that show.
What?
And we murdered the stage that night. I remember it as clear as yesterday. And right then I knew it was our time. So shortly thereafter, a small label out of Trenton called Rock and Hard Records stepped to us about that record and said, "Hey, we'd like to put this record out, such and such and such." Tony might have known the guys, or maybe Jeff, but they put this record out. The guys couldn't have been no more than maybe 7 to 10 years older than me at the time. So they're probably in their early 20s. and I'm just 17 or whatever. And they had another label. They had another group called Simply Deaf on the label. And I knew right then, I was just like, I want to put more records out, but I'm not going to put any more records out on Rock and Hard Records. I want to put my own records out. And so I went to Tony and I said, hey, yo, like you're making beats and stuff. We should start a company. He was like, a company? I was like, yeah, we should start a company. And he was like, yeah, I guess we should call it Two-Tone Productions, huh? I said, yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good idea. And so we started Two-Tone Productions, which was Anthony DePula, Anthony Hill, or Tony Hill and Tony DePula, or Tony Hill and Tony D. He was Italian, I was black. We played on all that. And there we had Two-Tone. And that's how that all got started.
Man, that, and I was just about to ask you about that, and you basically led it up into that point. So now I'm gonna ask this question, and you kind of hinted to it, but I'm gonna see, can I get like a piercing question? You and Tony started Two-Tone, and in interviews you said, you know, through hustle and savvy, you were able to get like a 50-50 percentage in Diversity Record.
I was.
Tell us a little bit about Diversity Record and that deal. How did that happen? Because you're not even 20 years old at the time.
My next move. Like I said, I didn't want to put out any more records on anybody's labels. I was just like, oh, I got to do this myself somehow. And it just so happened that this guy named Timothy Baylor had just started this label called Diversity. And I was like thinking, well, I got a record on the radio and he got a record company. And he ain't got any artists, and I got a record on the radio. I went to him. I was just like, hey. As a matter of fact, if I remember correctly, he set up that meeting because he didn't know how I was going to come to him. And we started talking about doing another record. And I told him, why would I do a record with you? I just did a record with, you know, this other small label here. Why would I do that with you? Now, I haven't gone into great detail of how this happened until now, but that's exactly how that happened. I was just like, why? What's in that for me? And he said, well, what do you want? And I said, to be honest with you, if you want me to be here, I'm gonna want 50% of this label.
Hey. This Master P type stuff right here, dog.
And I don't know about Master P, but because at the time I didn't even know what a Master P was. All I knew is, before I even met Tim, I knew I wanted to put out my own records. And I figured a closed mouth don't get fed. Either he gonna say no or he gonna say yes. And if he said no, I'll go find out my own way to do it. He just so happened to think about it and he was just like, you got a deal.
Yo.
I never really looked back on it or even got too excited even back then, because in my mind I was like thinking, there's no way he's gonna say no. And that's how I approach mostly everything, even now to this day, that when I want to do something, I do it.
Damn. Wow. Okay. And I'm glad you gave us that exclusive, because like I said, man, I had never, I listened to it. I was like, all right, this makes sense, but I'm gonna have to ask him just because I wanted to get that full story. All right. Okay. Poor Righteous Teachers.
Yeah.
When and how did they come into the picture? Because at this time you got your own label now.
Well, we, Timothy and I, we now have Diversity. And I'm still half owner of Two-Tone Productions at the time. And Tony and I would, get together regularly now, and we would link and talk about different stuff, and we were recording and different things. And I remember we were riding around town, and I guess Tony keeps his ear to the street. He knew a lot of the local guys in Trenton. He knew who was hot, who wasn't. And we went to this little, I guess you can call it like a cookout or a backyard party. But it wasn't really much of a party when we got there. I don't know if people had already left or they just hadn't gotten there yet. But it wasn't really much of a party. There was hardly any people there. But there was a DJ set up, some real janky speakers or whatever. And I don't remember if Tony disappeared or if somebody disappeared and was like, because they knew me because, like I said, I had this record on the radio. And in a small town like Trenton, you know, those kind of things kind of resonate pretty quickly. And somehow, Wise ended up at that little nothing of a party. And when he came, I remember, I don't know if I handed him the mic or he took it off the table or whatever. But as soon as I heard Wise Intelligence rhyme, I was just like, he has to be my next artist. I knew it right then. And I talked to him. He went and talked to his crew, which was Culture Freedom, and another brother. I don't know at the time if Shaheed was actually in the group at the time. I don't remember. I thought they had another DJ at the time. Maybe it was Father Shaheed back then even. So anyway, we talked to them and said, hey, you know, I got this label and I would love to have y'all on this label with me and we can go and attack all of
rap game.
Rap, like with Jersey, Philly, and New York, and we can run and do this thing. And they were excited about it. I don't think that they were nearly as excited as I was, because in my mind, I was like thinking, we are about to take over the world. I got this young brother who raps like nothing ever I've heard before, ever in life. And me, with my mind, the way it works, I'm like thinking, you know, how many of him am I going to find once we get this thing going? And anyway, I don't think Tony liked it. He never said anything outwardly, but you know, like you start to get these feelings about stuff. And I think Tony, because I was part two-tone and part diversity, I think he took offense to that somehow. Why, I don't know. I mean, he, you know, it wasn't like it was hurting him. And Tony was working with a lot of different groups that I would never, ever, think about it. Even when he started producing PRT, you know, I wasn't in his pockets. I wasn't trying to stop him or stand in his way. As a matter of fact, it was just the opposite. I was being very, very supportive of whatever he wanted to do. And I think Tony started getting into PRT's ear. And the next thing you know, I'm hearing they want to release before we could even get their first record out. And Timothy was totally against it. And because we had them signed, he wanted to hold them. He wanted to hold them to their contract. And I pulled Tommy to the side. I remember them saying, I remember this like it was yesterday. I went up on Timothy's porch and I could see Wise and I could see Culture down in the street waiting for this answer. And Timmy was like, and verbatim, fuck that. They are our artists and we're going to put them out. And that's that. And I was just like, yo, no, that's not just that. That's not what that's going to be. Because if they don't want to be here, we're not going to get the best from them. And it's going to be, you know, we're going to be fighting tooth and nail over nothing. And I convinced them to let them go. And probably one of the worst things I could have ever done, but it was the right thing to do because they didn't want to be there